So years ago, I used to do this thing. It wasn't years ago, it was a couple years ago. After my book came out, I was like, writers have got to be active on Twitter. Twitter's an important thing. So I set myself a challenge where I would, much like this podcast, where I release a new episode every day, Monday to Friday. I did the same on Twitter. I'd drop 10 new tweets every weekday as like a writing exercise. And then I'd share them on Instagram. And it was a bit of fun because it was like forced me to, as a writing exercise, to, like jot down notes that would just go on my free writing Word doc and like actually create little jokes out of them or like little tweets and have some banter on social media. And it was like a manageable way to, yeah, put stuff out there in the short term. I did that for a while. Anyway, one day I did this. I never had any issues. I eventually, out of nowhere, Instagram/Facebook said, "Yeah, we're banning your account." They didn't give me a reason why, and it was bizarre because there were no warnings in terms of the content that I put out, and there were some like racy stuff, as I'll get to in a moment. Um, but yeah, I only have ever had one issue where I tweeted something and went out on Twitter, no problem. And then I took a screenshot and put it on Instagram. And then I didn't think about it. And the next day they Instagram deleted the story. Didn't say that it was an official warning or anything. It said it was just a content violation and uh they've taken down the story. So it wasn't an official strike. It was, and so anyway, that tweet was just to make sure it can live on in spite of of Mark Zuckerberg. The tweet was quote, "Look at us, we're just kids having fun," end quote. And then the quote was attributed to me and my 30 something mates with our dad bods and early grays as we stuffed the dead hooker into a sack and throw her off a bridge into the river. So yeah, not my finest hour, but basically saying that men don't really men take a while to grow up. And I think that's a good and bad thing. And it was inspired by something that actually happened to me, not the dead hooker with my bros, but it was in my buddy's house in our early 20s. It was like a Sunday or Saturday afternoon. We were like pre-gaming for something. We were watching like a football game at my buddy's house, and I remember my friend's mother called out to someone. She was like, "Do you know if the boys are staying for dinner?" Like trying to figure out whether she needed to cook some extra snags on the barbie for all us shitheads. And one of my other buddies started laughing and he was like, "I wonder how long we're going to be the boys for." So at that point, we're in our early 20s and we were still very much the boys. There's no doubt about it. And, 10 years on, give or take, we've kind of become men. And it's interesting to try and figure out why. And to be clear, I'm not talking internal. Internally, I think most men stay stationed at the mental age of like 16 to 18 for the rest of their lives. That's kind of the sweet spot in the kind of area in which you feel kind of equipped to function throughout life. On the verge of manhood is kind of like the internal state. But at a certain point, people start looking at you as a man. And it's not necessary. I guess there's signs of aging where it's like, yeah, you've gone bald, you've gone gray. But I've known dudes who are bald or gray or just look older in the face who still are very boyish. But it's more a case of like, at a certain point, people can just, you give off a man vibe. And I wonder what it is. One day you're a young dude, the next day you're a man, or you gradually change over the course of a few months or a year. What can fucking happen. Forgetting about any triggered traumatic events or anything like that. Most men, I believe, become men. They transition out of being a young dude because I think there's some type of awareness of how many traps there are out in the world. But when you're young, you're oblivious. You're kind of aware that things are fucked up, but you're like, what am I going to do about it? I think if you're intelligent, you capitalize on the freedom and the lack of stakes that exist when you're younger. You can not think about that all that heavy stuff with zero ramifications. You can fuck off and travel or date crazy people or just do whatever you want and just push that all to the side, worry about it later. I think that's kind of the right thing to do as opposed to getting hung up on heavy stuff. But at a certain point, you come up for air and you look around, you're like, wow, there are a lot of fucking traps. And if I'm not careful, I'm going to get ensnared in one. And I need to kind of like figure some shit out. And so these are the big three that I feel like are the kind of like signposts or markers that if you even have like a primitive awareness of, you're in the early phases of becoming a man. The three are mortgages, insurance stuff, and anything to do with like investment, stock market stuff. Because again, you see young dudes dabble with this type of shit. The TikTokers, day trading, or kind of like trying to teach you financial hacks and stuff like that. But I think men, what they do is is they kind of like they flirted with disaster in their young manhood, and they're like, all right, I need to grow up a little bit. And then like you talk to a man, and their kind of perspective is interesting. It's kind of like it's not like how do I beat the system? It's like here's how I'm trying not to get fucked. These are the things that I've gleamed. Um Gleamed or gleamed or both. Fuck knows. Yeah, those are the things I think. And it changes you because once you have this knowledge, you kind of like, all right, now my job, now that I've got this information, I can't kind of forget it. I've sorted out. It's now part of me. I won't. I have to put it into play because otherwise that would be highly embarrassing if I knew some of this shit, or at least I knew it was danger Robinson family, and I didn't fucking pull my finger out and at least try and not get completely fucked over. I think that's what it is. I think that you can still look relatively young. You can like be child, you can have kids or you cannot have kids. But as soon as you kind of like mortgages, insurance, investment stuff, as soon as you have some type of primitive understanding, that's when you stop being a young dude and that's when you start becoming a man. It's a theory I spent about 45 seconds coming up with. So I really kicked the tires on it. Let me know your thoughts if you've got a differing opinion. Or perhaps you want to fucking big me up and say, you've nailed it again, big man. I'd appreciate any type of feedback. All right, catch you on the next one. Bye.